That is so irritating. Let me see. Okay, let me go over to YouTube and see if we are visible there. My
Let's
apologies
take
to
a
anyone
look.
watching. This is a bunch of bullshit. Yeah, okay, we are live on YouTube. Okay. That let me
There
get
we
that
go.
up. Oh,
I
this is
see
so annoying
us.
because I'm gonna have to start figuring out how to do this via OBS if we keep having this trouble. So apparently we are on YouTube, and I guess that's where we're gonna be. So I'm going to spread this link around, and Georgia, while I'm doing that, let's have a little informal chat. As I get started, because this whole thing was inspired by Ian Crossland of Timcast IRL. Because anytime someone mentions revenge or even seeking justice in a passionate manner, he gets super uncomfortable and starts freaking out. So
The H
that has,
word comes out
yeah,
of his mouth.
yeah, it has freaked him out, and that annoyed both of us. Let's see, Rumble has messed up. Here's the new link. So why don't you share a few thoughts about our dear old Ian while I spread the good word to the people?
All right, guys, listen. Listen, Linda, come closely. Ian Crossland, Ian, I'm speaking to you. I know you don't know who I am. I know you really don't care what I say, but my guy, please come back to Earth. We need you here. I think that you are a valuable asset, but sometimes when you fly into the ether, boy, you have a tendency to shake the ground. And it gets under a lot of people's skins. And I want to say that you're a very misunderstood individual. And I can see some of your points. But to take the contrarian point, when these issues of correction come up, really makes me worried for your soul because you're going to end up walked upon. You're going to end up with people beating up on you. And not only are you going to take it, but you're going to make excuses for these people and reasons why it's not right for you to take your deserved revenge. And today's topic, of course, is about revenge. And we are going to get into how revenge shouldn't be necessarily a dirty word.
Yeah, it's complicated. I think there's a lot of nuance on that, and I'm halfway through spreading the link for sure because
Wonderful.
we're going to have to really address this because there's so much poison in our society, and you are never going to be cured of the effects of that poison until you fully excise the wound, you clean it out, and you make sure that that influence is no longer there. And also, I think another thing that adds on to his whole discomfort with it is because for so long we've had a society that really is allergic to consequences, especially the
Mm-hmm.
natural and logical consequences of one's actions. And I think we are fighting off against that. And I mean, we are picking on Ian a little bit, but it is with love. I do think he needs more of the earth element in his makeup. If I ever get the chance to meet him, I've got a few crystals that I think would be beneficial for that purpose. But I don't think he's alone. I do not think that
No.
he is alone at all because we see this theme in other people in society. There's one children's show that I think is the gold standard for cartoons. It's Avatar: The Last Airbender, and the main character was very anti-revenge and this and that. And while I think it is important to teach children that maybe you don't go um, hitting everyone who hurts, I think as they get older, we need to start them a more nuanced perspective of there is a time when retribution is required, as uncomfortable as that is.
Yes, yes. And it's kind of funny, especially when we talk about Ian's adversity to, I guess, just being mean. And that's kind of like where I want to approach the topic because he gets so fired up, not because I think that he wants to be complacent or he wants to see things go the
Mhm.
wrong way or he doesn't see the wrong that's happening, But it's a fallacy that a lot of people tend to fall into, that in order to be the more mature person, you have to take the high road, or that you
Hmm.
have to be morally superior by not assuming to stoop to somebody's level. And, as witches, we kind of look at that energy a little bit differently. And,
Hmm.
when you talk about natural law and repercussions for things that happen, every action has an opposite but equal reaction. So, in our minds, I think it's a lot easier for us to digest that, well, if you do something stupid and you get hurt, or there are negative consequences for that action, it doesn't necessarily mean that that action was negative by default, that it is actually something that can be a positive experience.
Or at the very least that you can learn from it. And I think we also look at the question of, is it actually stooping to someone's level? Is it I think that's more of an open-ended question for us, just because I don't think that's where we start. I don't think that we assume that it is a stooping or that we are lacking in moral fiber if retribution is called for. So while we're waiting for people to gather, and thank you very much for anyone who was so kind as to actually click on the YouTube link. And if you would please, if you would spread this onto your social media, the viewings on the YouTube end always suck, and I don't know why I'm having the technical issues with Rumble. So while we're having to make do with YouTube, if you could help me get more eyes, that would be so enormously helpful, because we do want to have as big a conversation as what we can possibly manage. But on that note, and now that I'm no longer distracted, let's start talking about revenge. Because we have no definitions anymore, so I thought I'd give us three. Uh, this one is from dictionary.com. Verb used with object to exact punishment or expiation for a wrong on behalf of, especially in a resentful or vindictive spirit. He revenged his murdered brother. And their second definition is to take vengeance for, inflict punishment for, avenge. He revenged his brother's murder. And then our second one comes from, let's see, where is it? Yes, Merriam Webster. The desire for vengeance or retribution, an act or instance of retaliating in order to get even, an opportunity for getting satisfaction, which I'm not going to deny in the course of this conversation that sometimes it just feels good to get a little of your own back. I will be honest. And then
True.
from dictionary.cambridge.org, we have harm done to someone as punishment for harm that they have done to someone else. And this definition has really been sticking in my head, because when I think about revenge, that's more or less what I'm really thinking of. Which of those definitions fit closest to where your head's at, or knowing you, did any of them bear any resemblance to how you think of this word?
It's funny because, you read all three of these definitions, and of course, there's some overlap to them. But what I noticed in the very first definition was the interchanging of the word avenge and revenge. So, in
Hmm.
my mind, when you're talking about revenge, this particular definition hits hardest. Harm done to someone as punishment for harm done to them. That's the revenge. So somebody vengefully acted towards you. So now you are going to vengefully act towards them, which is where re comes in the definition of
Hmm.
the base core word, so on and so forth. Now, when you talk about a vengeance, when something that was done to you unjustifiably comes back around, that you can obtain satisfaction through justice, I think is the difference between like revenge and avenging somebody. So if somebody unlawfully takes your property, and you go to a court of law, and a court of law dictates that they must return that property to you, that's not revenge, that's a vengeance. You had a wrong done to you, and now the correct response is for a wrong perceived. to be done to them. So it's interesting to see that the actual dictionary.com will interchange those words. And is there anything to that core process and the re and the a whenever you think of the two terms, or is it interchangeable?
Well, I have to admit, before we started talking about this topic, I hadn't thought about it as deeply. But it does seem that, and I think one of the quotes that we'll get into later does talk about how avenge is relating to a crime committed, whereas revenge, we're not necessarily talking about criminal action. Now, we're
Right.
not talking about anything good.
Right.
So it could still be a very serious offense, but it's not necessarily in the criminal code. And
Right.
that's, I think that's really what trips people up a lot, and as well as the concept of, because if we take the Cambridge dictionary definition of, harm that is returned as a punishment, then it really makes it dicey of how do we distinguish between justice and revenge, and and the moral associations with that, because those are words that come with a lot of baggage for people. You aren't just
Yes.
getting a cold, intellectual, dispassionate reaction to that. There's always emotion attached to it. So,
Yes.
from your perspective, where do you think that distinction actually lies?
I do believe that it's with that re part of the word, just like, okay, I was done wrong, so therefore I must do wrong to others. And then you say the word wrong, and the negative connotations just start flowing. So
Hmm.
I do believe that it's in those two little letters at the beginning of the word that really kind of elicit that emotional response, because it's a reaction. It's, your perception of somebody else's actions towards you, and then your reaction to those actions. I know that's a lot of action, and I'm doing a great job of legally defining revenge, right?
Well, I mean, and I hope anyone watching, they know that we're not ones to get too hung up on this kind of stuff unless it's absolutely necessary. So I hope that is absolutely coming through.
Right.
Let me see. Let's see if we can make this a little bit more,
Palatable.
yeah, a little bit more
Or
colloquial for us. I mean,
there you
um,
go.
let's see. What about the example of the Avengers movies, and that in the first one with Tony Stark saying that they couldn't necessarily do anything about to prevent the attack, but they can avenge the people of Earth, and I think that on as far as getting a more intuitive understanding of what these words mean, I think that's as good of an example as what I can come up with on the fly, just because he's referring to a wrong, a crime, an act of war, something that goes so far beyond the usual framework of the justice system that is requiring um, an extra response, something that is operating independently of that. And I think that's a fair thing, whether we're talking about to avenge or to revenge, is that you are operating outside of the legal framework. But,
Hmm.
we also know that justice is not something that's just a concept confined to courts. Indeed, I
Hmm.
wish we could find it in courts. We're a little bit worried about that these days.
At the moment, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
I mean, we had a whole 5-hour live stream on Tuesday about that very concern. Um, and I'm not sure where I really want to take it, because I just feel like this is an important place to sit with, is that these aren't necessarily completely contradictory things. And that I
Mm-mm.
think it'd even be possible for justice to take place and someone essentially getting their revenge. Although it does seem like they may not be the ones who are um, executing that revenge. For example, someone kills your loved one. The person is taken to court. It's proved beyond any doubt whatsoever that they were guilty. They were found guilty, and the authorities are taking care of it from there. They have gotten what's theirs. You have essentially you have gotten your revenge, because they're going to be punished in whatever fashion. But you're not the one who's actually doing it.
Extracting it. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
I think that's also a difficult concept, because I mean, this is my perception. Tell me what you
Mhm.
think, and anyone watching in the chat, please tell me what you think. I think maybe we tend to view to take revenge as something that we are doing ourselves, when that's not necessarily the case.
No, and it really depends on, like you said, with the situation. So let's tone it down and
Hmm.
go really, really basic. You work at a job and you have worked there for 5 years and you do a great job. You're in line for a promotion, but they hire somebody who has more qualifications than you, and they in turn jump you in line for said promotion. What is your natural reaction? You want to take revenge. You want to be revengeful to the
Hmm.
coworker. You want to be revengeful to the company. You want to do something. So you go through your entire workday and you nitpick at what this person is doing wrong in their job. And you collect all this data and you go to the boss and you say, this person can't possibly do this job because this is all the things that they did wrong. And the boss goes, oh my God, you're absolutely right. We shouldn't have done it that way. We're going to demote her and promote you.
Hmm.
You've taken your revenge. Now, is what you did wrong? Is it necessarily unmoral or immoral to take this collection of data where factually they are incapable of doing their job and they were put into a position that they didn't earn or didn't deserve, then to go back and extract your revenge by being honest and being the best candidate for the position? Is that a negative revenge story?
I really don't think so, because what did they do that was improper? The fact that they had an emotional component and motivation for what they were doing, it did not alter the facts of the case. That
Mm-hmm.
there was someone who was unqualified, who was making a mess of things. We are correcting that. The fact that it makes me happy and that the
That's
other
just a
person,
bonus.
yeah, that is a bonus. And I think that is the source of the discomfort, that if you are happy about what's happening, then somehow you are doing wrong. I mean, it's like, how many my husband and I, we were watching this documentary. It had to do with court cases and true crime murders, and victims of the family talking about how they had forgiven the murderer and all this and that because that made
Cringe.
them better. Oh my God. I mean, I cannot stand it. And I
I
know they're
don't.
getting pressure. I know they're getting
Mhm.
pressure from people who probably mean well and think this is what you need for emotional peace and emotional closure. And I'm like, I don't really think I agree with that at all.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm. I'm with you 100%. And, revenge doesn't necessarily have to take the course of an eye for an eye.
Mhm,
Revenge simply must correct the balance of the scales, in
mhm,
my opinion. And I think that that's a big takeaway. And the first hurdle for people is really to get over the idea that good and bad must be split. Like there is such a thing as being amoral, having no good, having no bad, simply just being the balancing act, the balancing factor
mhm,
to it. And again, I think that that follows scientific principle. That follows
mhm,
natural law. And the people who get involved in this are the ones that shove their emotions into
mhm.
it, and then that's when it escalates, when you are so hurt by what's happened to you that you want to have somebody experience that pain on their conscience the way that it hurts yours. And it goes
Mm.
back to, in my opinion, wanting again to dictate the way somebody else feels, and
Yeah.
it's really hard to do that.
Really hard, if not outright impossible, because everyone has a different emotional makeup. I mean, this is what I said to some witches I've known over the years who, their boyfriend dumps them, they're pissed, they want to turn him into a toad. I understand that feeling. They either want that or they want to get him back. And I'm like, yeah, you have the same problem, these two groups of people. You are trying to make someone feel when in all reality, that person probably is not feeling for you at all. And
Hmm.
that you're not going to be able to make them hurt enough to make you feel satisfied. And that's where people also get tripped up with revenge about, if it is only about getting that emotional satisfaction, sometimes that can be like a bottomless pit. And
Yeah.
yeah. But let's look at some of the quotes because you and I collected a lot of interesting quotes
Don't
relating
we
to revenge, and I
always?
want to dissect them a bit. Right? We do. We do a good job with this. So we've got this one from Samuel Johnson, who said that revenge is an act of passion, vengeance of justice. Injuries are revenged, crimes are avenged. And for anyone wondering, he's an English critic, biographer, essayist, poet, and lexicographer.
Yes,
So this
very
is one of
good
yours.
background
Mhm,
on that there. Yeah, that's what actually the quote that got me thinking about the difference between revenge and a vengeance and how
mhm,
emotions are tied to just those two little letters at the beginning of the word. And it could really does come back down to the idea that if you are reacting in a perceived negative fashion, then off top automatically that's the wrong thing to do. And I think that comes from base core programming
mhm,
through social engineering, religious engineering, the desire to submit to authority type of
mhm.
deal, that somebody is going to disapprove of what I do. But again, you go back to the idea of justice, and we kind of
Mhm.
just kind of like skirted past that. If everything that is done in reaction to an appeared wrong or supposed wrong to a person is nothing but revenge, then how do you define justice? And is
Yeah.
that just an abstract term that has no meaning at that point because you should never do unto others as they've done to you?
Well, I mean, on what basis would you have a court system at that point?
You
Because
wouldn't.
you couldn't. I mean, and maybe that's part of the issue that people are facing, and maybe that's why they have such an issue with court proceedings, even the ones that are totally above board, because not everything is this horrifying, politicized bullshit witch hunt type of stuff that we've been
Mhm.
seeing in more prominent cases. I mean, sometimes it really is cut and dry, straightforward stuff, and people are still uncomfortable with that. I think that this whole thing of you must never judge anyone. Oh my goodness. That is
It's hard.
so detrimental because life requires judgment. You need to exercise judgment and who you choose to associate with, whether it's casual friends or who you marry. I mean,
Mhm.
you need to make decisions about what's a good business opportunity, what is not, or what principles will you live by and will you not. So by approving of one thing, that means you are disapproving or at least not approving as much of something else, and so many people cannot bring them to do that. And this is something that even pagan communities have latched onto. And I thought, of all the things you could have possibly have borrowed from the Christians, why did you pick that? Why are you making me crazy?
It's the desire for utopia, and that's where I think Ian really kind of
Mhm,
loses his mind all the time because he is bent on creating a space where everybody is constantly happy and nobody has any grievances, nobody has any
mhm.
injustices done to them, and it's rainbows and sunshines and ponies, and why just can't we all get along? And I'm like, I really am scared first and foremost by that whole ideology. I
Mhm,
like having the passion in this world. I
mhm,
like having the freedom to make wrong decisions. I know that we all talk about how we want to be better people and we want to do XYZ and we don't want to infringe upon others. But there is really something to be said about the struggle bus life. There's something to be said about people who can fumble their way through a bad experience and come out on the other side more equipped to handle that experience if it comes up again, and make themselves available to other people going through that in the moment, because we don't all share the same strengths. But if we lived in this world where there was never anything done wrong to anybody else, and the idea and concept of equalizing or balancing or whatever wasn't on the table, like, you think you're bored now? What the hell would you
mhm.
what would you even do? Like, it's scary, right?
Oh, absolutely it is. And it does not reflect reality. It doesn't reflect what we've seen of human nature. It doesn't reflect what goes on in the animal kingdom or just the universe. I mean, if a star goes supernova, for all we know, that took out a civilization. It didn't do it. It did it from a dispassionate place. It did it because that was simply the function of nature. And,
Mhm.
the job of anyone sentient was to get out of the way if they could. But I would imagine that even when we get to the afterlife, we're not going to find this utopia. I mean, you don't really find the utopian idea in pagan lore. But then again, we're looking at nature to find out what's real. We're not looking at it would be so nice and sparkly if things were like this. It's like, let's see what things are and then make decisions on that basis. Let's
Yeah,
see. Our
right.
next quote, also yours, it comes from William Shakespeare, and if I have to tell you who that is, do not tell me because I cannot deal with that kind of discouragement today. But he says, "If you prick us, do we not bleed? If you tickle us, do we not laugh? If you poison us, do we not die? And if you wrong us, shall we not revenge?" That's pointing to a very human impulse, and it's just saying it with full acceptance of just this is the natural outcome of events. And I found it, this will sound odd, call me a crazy, I found it oddly comforting.
I'm with you, and this was the one that, like, I I read it again, I read it again, and I just was like, "Oh, they literally embodies exactly how I look at this, is that we are very natural human individuals, and if we
Mhm,
perceive something to be incorrect, it is within our nature to correct it. And that can look a different way to whoever is observing it from the outside. But it's the same thing as if you took a needle, stuck it into your skin is going to produce blood. If you
mhm.
elicit, soft touch and you're playing with your baby, you're going to bring out the laughter, the response of the body. And again, if you are given so many bad ideas, eventually your spirit will die. So, I think that there's double entendre here with the
Mhm.
use of words. Of course, Shakespeare was a poet, one of my favorites. But again, like you said, it's so basic English that you can't miss it.
Well, at least not with going well out of your way to do so. And
Yeah.
it got me to thinking while you were talking. It's just that what a human concept justice really is. I mean, it's also a divine concept, but how we enact it on Earth, it's a very human thing. Because the animal world, we know they're not concerned with justice and are we acting properly. It's more so, oh, you threatened to take my food, and boy howdy, I'm
We're
not
going to
going to
defend
stand.
it.
I'm going to
Yeah.
defend that. And we are these beings that have that dual nature. We do have more so that unconscious instinctual animal side, but we also have the more spiritual side. We are a blending of the divine and the material in a way that other species on this planet are not.
Hmm.
That is what actually makes us different. And the fact that we're capable of asking these questions, I mean, that almost feels like this huge evolutionary step forward in and of itself. Because I'm telling you right now, the cats do not care about right or wrong. They care about mine and did you take it?
Yes, yes. And we are often told that that very essence of being makes us unhuman, or is the deciding factor, the separation between humans and animals, and that we must take precaution to always act in opposition of our animalistic nature, to
Hmm.
not partake in those base instincts. But I think you hit the nail on the head. There is a method of survival that inherently lives in that reaction, that inherently is detrimental to your well-being if you fail to have those reactions. I mean,
Hmm.
how many tribes would go extinct if they didn't believe in defending their own land, their own resources, their family members? And again, people aren't always honest. In addition to having these base instincts of being able to be aware of things outside of our own needs, we also kind of have the idea that uh, it's wrong for us to want our own. It's wrong for us to want to survive. But your own survival is the reason why you're on the earth. The whole life experience is to survive and to survive well. So when you remove the ability of somebody taking their own malicious intent out on you to eliminate you and your family's survival, that's where Darwinism comes into play.
Yeah, for sure. And I have a feeling over the next few years, we're going to be winning more Darwin Awards in society.
Yeah,
Now,
right.
here's the German proverb you came at me with. Revenge converts a little right into a great wrong. What inspired you to share this particular one?
Now, that was the first one that actually popped up onto the screen. And I thought to myself, that's going to ruffle some feathers because, again, revenge comes with such a negative connotation. But we understand that the premise of revenge comes from a wrongdoing. So, in order to get the word good and revenge on the screen together, I went to the Germans.
Oh, bless, bless.
My husband's going to kill me for that one.
Oh, you know, husbands are to be seen and not heard sometimes. I'm sure he will get over it. But I mean, I do like the much more pragmatic approach to it. And this seems like one of those sayings that might have survived from an earlier time period than the Christian era. I mean, that was just my first instinct of it because so many of these folk proverbs, they do have deeper roots.
Right.
Then I came with one from Marcus Aurelius. The best revenge is to not be like your enemy. And he mentioned this in his meditations, which if no one's ever read, oh my goodness, you really should. Life changing. But I mean, that got me to thinking of, does that preclude you not having proper retribution? Because surely you can be unlike your enemy and still have the retribution within its proper bounds. I mean,
I agree.
isn't that what the court system is supposed to be? Supposed
And
to be.
maybe that's what that alludes to, is you don't stoop to their level, but you work around your moral compass. So if somebody comes in the night and murders your dog, you could go take your revenge and murder their dog too. But wouldn't it be better to turn them into the authorities and to see them go through the humiliating process of due process and then punishment and fines and so on and so forth? Depends on who you are. If you want it
Yeah.
done quick, easy, fast, you're going to go kill that dog and you're not going to think twice of it. But does that make you different than your enemy? Absolutely not.
No. I mean, and that is a point that's worth considering about when you are enacting revenge. It makes a great deal of difference about whether or not the person you're targeting is the person who is suffering, or whether you're incorporating people or, in your example, animals that had nothing to do with it. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that that's one of the things that really crosses the line for me. I mean, if someone committed a serious enough wrong to where I'm committing revenge, I'm going to do something to them, but that doesn't mean I'm going to do something, to their spouse, their children, their animals, or anything else in their circle, because the issue was between me and that person who did wrong.
Yeah, well, the mob is good for this. How many hits went out because somebody acted without the boss's permission,
Hmm.
and it was a revenge, type of uh, incident. And this is where a lot of people, again, go back to that negative connotation of an eye for an eye leaves the whole world blind. Okay, yeah, you are absolutely right. But if you do not give justice to those wronged, then the whole world will be dead because it won't be satisfied with just the eye of their enemy, correct?
Yeah, dead or in complete chaos. I mean, and how often do we say that the major destabilization factor is that we see all of these high crimes being committed by politicians in broad daylight, and no one's getting what's coming to them. And and poor President Trump, he's getting everything that's coming to other people. He's on trial because of things that other people have done. I mean, it's absolutely wild.
It's bananas. But
Yeah.
this is where we get to the idea that, if he comes out and kind of what Ian lost his mind about, if he comes out, wins the election, and then actually holds the administrative officers to task, is that necessarily revenge? In my opinion, I don't think it is, for the simple fact that these people are acting outside the bounds of their position anyways. So if somebody's not doing the job that you hired them for, obviously, Ian, you fired them. It doesn't matter if they have families. It doesn't matter if they have children. I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry. They've got to go.
Well, and I got to thinking that could be one of those instances where revenge and justice dovetail and are just
Mhm.
absolutely hand in glove. Because if you are in the bureaucracy and you're saying, "Yeah, I don't care what all my bosses say, and in fact, I'm going to sabotage them," I mean, you're a little shit, and you need to be got rid of. And
Which
if
brings
that
us
got
to your next quote.
it does, which I think it was because we got kind of a variety of quotes between the two of us that looked at this from all angles. And I like this one. He's saying, karma comes after everyone eventually. You can't get away with screwing people over your whole life. I don't care who you are. What goes around comes around. That's how it works. Sooner or later, the universe will serve you the revenge that you deserve. And that's from the Karma Club. It's a book. Apparently, the author does young people's fiction, Jessica Brody, and I just thought, yeah, that's a very witchy way of looking at things. I resonated with that particular quote because the way I look at it, that if something is really unbalanced, even if I stay my hand or I will go so far and no further, the universe and certainly the gods, they don't have human constrictions. The universe is just going to dish out whatever's proper, and then the gods will visit upon you what they think you deserve if they think it's worth their while.
Yeah, a lot of people, when you talk about acts that elicit a feeling of revenge, they are usually things that are done either nonchalantly, they don't know about it. Like the example with the new hire coming in and kind of pissing off the coworker, or you have somebody who has a issue with a family or somebody, and they come in and want to cause that person harm or whatever. There's a follow up with those people's actions. Their lives don't end once they commit that wrong versus somebody. It sets in motion a chain of action.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's very evident, like you rob a bank and then the police are chasing you and you go to jail and then you go through due process. But then there's also things that, like, if you can steal a candy bar out of a store without being caught, maybe you escalate and you move to going to your friend's house and stealing money out of their house, or you go somewhere and it just kind of like escalates the behavior, and then eventually you get caught, and then it hits you like, oh, if I wouldn't have gotten away with it the first time, it wouldn't have escalated to the point where now I'm screwed.
That is so beautifully said. I cannot improve upon that. And
Hello, Raven.
we've got Raven Wolfgar in the chat. Hello, sir. Glad to have you here. My apologies if you went to the Rumble stream. I don't know why Rumble's acting up, but I'm delighted to have you here. I guess I'm going to start sharing YouTube live stream links everywhere, and then if Rumble works, that's wonderful, and we'll just see
Roll
how
with
long
it.
it's. Yeah, eventually, for Rumble's technical issues will sort themselves out. Oh, and the next one is from Machiavelli, because we cannot talk about revenge without referencing Machiavelli. And this one is an interesting one to me. People should either be caressed or crushed. If you do them minor damage, they will get their revenge. But if you cripple them, then there is nothing they can do. If you need to injure someone, do it in such a way that you do not have to fear their vengeance. I mean, that is wartime kapowie kind of thinking right there.
That also depends on how connected your original target is, because look at the
Mhm.
Hatfield and McCoys. I
Oh
mean,
gosh,
if
that's
you want
still
to
going
talk
on.
about if you want to talk about holding on to a grudge and continued justice and eye for an eye and all that, yeah, and agreed. If they would have wiped out either side of that line, yeah, there would be nothing that the other side could do. So yes, I do agree with his logic, but you better watch how far you have to take that line, because you never know.
Oh, for sure. Because this is really the principle that the left is operating under against us. They are trying to ensure that there's nothing that we can practically do, and that's why there's been so much escalation of talk on people who are more constitutionally minded of just what is the proper remedy. Because holy cow, if someone's whole goal and their whole philosophy is to destroy you, that
They're taking
is
everything. They're
yeah,
taking
that
everything.
yeah, I mean that's nothing short of a state of war. There's no difference between someone wanting to do that politically than someone who showed up with an army and said, "Yeah, we're totally getting rid of you people." I mean, the effect is the same because you are not going to be having anything afterwards. And this is scary territory because our republic does not know how to deal with this. And I've got some ideas. They're very medieval. But no one is ready to hear them. I mean, and that's just the way that it is.
That's okay. Nobody wants to listen to my scientific Darwinism either. So, and they're very closely related, believe it or not.
Yeah, and I agree with what you're saying, Raven. He says they're doing it to anyone who doesn't fall in line with them. Everyone. If you're not one of them, you're their enemy, or worse, their condescending term for a useful idiot and ally. I mean, 1,000%. I mean, and we're even seeing that enacted in the right because went into a tizzy over Glenn Beck's his representation of what he thought Wiccans were. Comparing us to some lunatic pedophile in a women's prison who should be in a men's prison, and then just tying it all together as if it's all the same thing, which it is not. But I mean, it's because we're not on his religious side. We must therefore represent everything evil. We must
Mm.
therefore be a leftist. We must therefore be one of these gender ideology grifters. I mean, and it is absolutely maddening because here we are saying, could we rally around the things we have in common, and could you actually find out what we are about before you criticize us? Because I mean, if he was disagreeing with things about us theologically that are actually common to the Wiccan faith, then okay, that's his opinion. That's not a problem. It's when we cannot have people like this amongst them, and I'm not even going to represent them accurately. That's why I'm like, we got ourselves a situation here. And I'm not feeling too cuddly at the moment.
I just wonder if they are still in revenge mode themselves for the nonconformists who kept the pagan ideas alive
Mhm.
this oh so long time. They needed a scapegoat in order to get mass compliance and carry out the things in history that they were able to accomplish. And now that they see people not only questioning their line of reasoning, but just the foundation of their faith, it seems very revengeful for
Mhm.
them to revamp the entire you're our devil line, and it falls right in line with what we're talking about, as how long does something like that carry through if you fail to cripple them, if you fail to
Mhm.
destroy them? Just the fact that we are here right now
Mhm.
shows this is what happens if you don't eliminate your enemies in a extreme fashion.
Well, I mean, and even during the forced conversions, it got pretty extreme. I mean, there came a point where it really was convert or die, and yet a few centuries later, here we are. So, I mean,
Mm.
that tells you just the strength of an idea. And also, I think that it is part of that vengeance. It is part of the, I thought we had this totally settled, and apparently it's not. I think also it's coming from this position of COVID really exposed the weaknesses. spiritual
Didn't it?
weaknesses in those Abrahamic tribes. And I think they're scared, and scared people tend to get aggressive. Let's see.
Yes.
And Raven
They
says,
act irrationally.
oh,
That's
yeah.
realistically what it is. But go ahead, Raven.
Yeah, my opinion is never encroach. Do not engage unless engaged. Once engaged, make them all incontinent at the thought of your name. Sir, I like the way you thought. Mr. Raven, for those who aren't a part of the Gilded group, he cooled down my volcanic temperature a little bit, which I greatly appreciate. And that's the benefit of having some masculine energy in the group, because the feminine energy is a lot more emotionally driven, and once we get to a point, we're just done listening. And so the fact that he could re-engage me intellectually on this issue, bravo, full props, much appreciated. And that is one of the many benefits of people acting in accordance with pagan values. Each part of those dynamic polaric energies can benefit the other. So yay
I
for
said, and it's
paganism.
beautiful, like you said, because we are looking at this from a very emotional standpoint. It takes a lot for us
Mm-hmm.
to like break down the logistics of it all. But like you said, he watched the video that you posted and reacted
Mm-hmm.
to, read all the pertaining information, was able to come out immediately with this level-headed, like logical response, and it was interesting to watch the dynamics happen right in front of your face, which is why you have to go to Gilded and join Blackbird's Brew.
And apparently, I just stole one of his quotes with this slide. Beware the fury of a patient man, John Dryden, 17th century English poet and playwright. Jinx, great minds
Yes.
think alike.
As a
Because it's
matter of fact, I translated this exact quote into Irish, into Gaelic, and I put it on a flag. And when I was with Teespring, I had the American flag with this in Gaelic on it, with the Trinity on the stars of the flag, and then it was tinted in green. I thought it was a really cool design, but of course, if anybody's interested, I will post a picture of that so that you can actually show this off, because what a quote. What a quote.
It is an awesome quote. And Raven is referencing Cradle of Filth's cover of Twisted Sister's song, The Fire Still Burns, comes to mind. I don't know that song. Georgia, you're
Yes.
nodding your head. It looks like you are.
Yes, 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 yes,
One of us know what you're
definitely.
talking about.
Yeah, that fellow metalheads, we gotta stick together.
But I do like this thought of just because someone isn't reacting immediately, it does not mean that the scales will not be rebalanced. Because that patient man, it's the difference between reacting in the fury of emotion and someone who's taking a dispassionate intellectual approach of, okay, here's how we're going to be fixing this. Um,
Hmm.
this is kind of the mindset of my husband, because I've never really seen him angry, certainly not towards me, because he is that patient man. And woe betide the world if that patience ever breaks. See, Raven is saying that he had a dream, and as strange as it seems, there's no embers glowing. The fire's gone out, and there's no need to shout. There's no anger showing. No, that's true. Nothing that I do ever seems to. Huh. That's an interesting
Lyrics.
dreams, especially. Oh, that's lyrics. Oh,
Lyrics.
okay. Okay.
Lyrics.
I thought he was telling us about an actual dream. That tells me shows how much I know. Let's see, and then it goes on, ease my fury, get out of my way. I'm the hangman today. I'm the judge and jury. Oh, yes, that is most satisfying. And
Hmm.
that
Yep,
actually
yep.
reminds me of a Miss Marple quote, that things are never settled until they're settled right. That's been going around in my head a lot lately, especially when it comes to presenting factual information and just trying to have to come at our society's problem from a place of common values, wherever those common values legitimately exist and can actually be drawn upon, because we do need to settle things correctly. Because if people keep going back to the same kind of dumbass trains of thoughts that created our problems to begin with, then the cycle will just repeat. And I think that's honestly what set me off more than anything else about Glenn Beck. It's because it's a repeating of the same bullshittery that has
That
been
we already
plaguing.
debunked.
Yeah, that's we already rebunked, and that's been plaguing Western civilization for centuries. And I'm a Leo with a Scorpio moon and a Capricorn ascendant. I lose my temper.
Just a little
I'm
bit, but that's
I'm
okay.
I'm not going to pretend that does not happen. And the last quote that I collected for this, before we just kind of expand and talk, is that Heinrich Heine, we should forgive our enemies, but not before they are hanged. He was a German poet, writer, and literary critic. I tell you what, we've been drawing from the Germans today, Georgia.
Yeah,
They have
yeah.
some useful thoughts for us.
I really do find myself aligning a lot with German philosophers, and I don't know if I should be proud about that or I should be scared about that. Ian, please don't come after me. I'm not Hitler, I
Right?
promise.
No. Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, if you can twist any kind of philosophy, but I mean, the Germanic peoples, they were such pragmatic, practical people.
Yes.
I mean, and I really like his attitude of that, the things have to be repaid.
Hmm.
Justice must be served. People have to, receive what is coming to them. And he's not even saying don't forgive them. It's just that there has to be a point, a process before that forgiveness can take place. And I think there's a lot to be said for allowing people to experience the consequences of their actions, even if we're not going so far as, the example of executions. But people need to experience and hit that of, oh, that's why that wasn't a brilliant idea, before you can really forgive them. I don't really approve of this promiscuous forgiveness that so many people are pushing.
I'm going to take a little bit of a different stance because my
Mhm.
interpretation of this, we should forgive our enemy, but not before they are hanged, means exactly that. Okay, you're going to reap the repercussions of your actions, but I'm not going to let that affect my soul or my
Mhm.
morality. So I can forgive you for your actions because ultimately it will be more favorable to me. It's going to hang less on my heart. I'm not going to have to worry about it. And then in some instances, that is, a favorable attribute for certain deities to, forgive your enemy, love your enemy, so on and so forth. But I think that that's just a allusion to self care, and
Mhm.
again, that idea of don't find yourself in a position where you are the one who ends up on the wrong side of revenge.
Yeah. And that's the reason why I wanted to include all the scope of the quotes that we've gathered together. It's just because there is nuance, and there is a point where even if your initial motivation was proper, a wrong was done, something needs to happen because of that. If you allow it to poison you, then that is a legitimate problem, and that is a legitimate criticism of the whole concept of revenge. And of course, I'm not criticizing people for bringing that up, but I don't think that it's this black and white, one size fits all. There's only one right answer here kind of thing. And the more we've been talking about this, the more I'm like, this is really a complicated area.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, what in our lives isn't a complicated area at this point in time? But like you said, it's one of those things that everybody immediately has an opinion on,
Hmm.
and you can find probably, I would go as far as to say, out of 50 people in a room, you could get 35 of them to have the same viewpoint and say you should never take revenge. There's never a reason for you to take things into your own hands and act on your own accord. Let somebody else do it. Let this happen. And that line of thinking has bled into every aspect of our lives to the point where we are just lacking personal responsibility on every level. And the people that don't take that into consideration, like the remainder, those people are probably a lot more apt to go out and do it without ever thinking about the ramifications of their actions, which makes them just as dangerous as the inactive bunch.
Yeah, I mean, and we're coming up against that, that the people doing the awful thing and the people who are too passive to do anything at all, essentially creating equal amounts of evil in our society. That has been coming up a lot lately, and I don't think it's coincidental. And we have another comment from Raven. He was saying, "Have you noticed that if you disagree on the most small of issues with the radical left, there's no path to redemption at all? Your life, if you cave, will be a constant struggle session." Oh, 1,000%. I mean,
They want it that way.
yeah, that's absolutely the case. And look forward to next Tuesday. I'll have a little canned video about never apologize.
You'll like it.
In this particular context, I think you will. As pagans, we don't do amen or hallelujah, but we need some kind of cry of jubilation. We need some kind of shorthand for that.
Whoa, God.
See, and then he went on to say, that's really our own logical problem. These people have no path to redemption, but they expect it of all of us. Example, COVID amnesty. Oh, yes. When people started asking for forgiveness for COVID, I'm like, bitch, I'm not even done with the initial part of being mad at you.
No, no, no. Listen, you cannot come to a legitimate high school dropout and argue sixth grade biology and science and be wrong and then come back and say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I was wrong. Will you forgive me?" No, bitch. The answer is no.
Well, not just forgive, they mean don't hold anything against for me. And also, the next time I say something, you have to totally believe me and take it at face value.
Yeah, right? No, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
And he's suggesting for our cry of a "oorah," his dad was a Marine. I've always been a little fond of that one myself. That could do it. I mean, I think any American, if they hear "hoorah," I think they know exactly what's being meant. We may have to adopt that. It's a bit masculine for me,
Oompa.
but I mean, we'll take it.
Is that Greek? Oompa.
Opa. I don't know. It seems like it's Mediterranean, if not Greek. I don't know.
Something.
That's a very
I
good
like that one
question.
too. That way we don't have to like be accused of stolen valor, you know.
Oh, that's true, because we don't wanna do that. Hmm. Oh, it's so very complicated, but then if we go with OPA, they'll accuse us
Of
yeah, it
cultural
is
appropriation.
Croatian, yeah, exactly, and apparently it is Greek, so, thank you, sir, you have
Okay,
fact
we'll
checked
put
us
an
very
L.
usefully there.
We'll put an L at the end of it. Opal. Opal. And now it's witchy.
It's just not catchy enough. We're gonna have to work on this one, gang. We're just gonna have to work on it.
Raven, we're looking at you.
Oh, I was
Oh,
thinking
there
of
you
other
go.
examples of in popular culture to where, the whole issue of revenge and what constitutes it and everything else. And of how that kind of affects people's thinking. And I was thinking actually again to Avatar: The Last Airbender, the character Katara, her mother was killed by this enemy soldier, and it got to a point where it was really, really bothering her, and she needed to settle this within herself. Well, one of the other characters, Zuko, he found out who it was, where they were, and he was essentially going to, go with her, take her there, and whatever she did that she saw fit is just that he was just there to be that in that supportive role of, this is up to you, your mom, he killed her, you decide what to do. Well, the character Aang, who's the main character, the Avatar, he was very against this. Oh, I don't think you should have revenge. I think you need to exercise forgiveness and blah 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 blah. And he was giving her this very kindergarten kind of argument, where Katara was in this very adult emotion complex place. She's in her mid-teens, but she's in this much more grown-up position. And so ultimately, they did catch up with her mother's murderer, and she saw him, and she ended up not killing him because she looked in his eyes and she saw nothing there. She saw an empty shell of a man. And so when they go back after sparing him, And the character of Aang said, "Oh, I'm so glad you chose to forgive them." And she said, "I didn't forgive him." And and she didn't even explain, because it just was not worthwhile talking with someone who was still operating on that child's level. And that's another thing with revenge. If you were suddenly confronted with your target and they have no soul left, at that point, I think that is where you do find kind of this natural conclusion and stopping point, because what would be the bloody point at that point?
Yeah, as you were talking, I was thinking of my name is Allende Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare
Mm-hmm.
to die. And,
Yeah.
the entire Princess Bride movie, he's so engulfed by his revenge. And then, you get to the end and you do your thing. And like you said, there's two different ways to look at those type of situations where you finally get to the end, you get to your target, and are
Mm-hmm.
you strong enough to carry it out? Does the
Mm-hmm.
passion really still burn? Because a lot of people survive on revenge as a motivating factor, but
Mm-hmm.
it's not motivating enough at the point of contention that they can actually go through with it, because then you're burnt out at that point. That
Oh
emotion
yeah.
has rode with you for so long. And then the concept of what happens after this revenge is extracted. What's my goal?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Where do we go from here? And I think a lot of people, especially going through like a judicial system, you'll see this a lot
Mm-hmm.
in like rape cases
Mm-hmm.
where you get your revenge and the uh, actor goes to jail, but you're still left incomplete. The damage has still been done to you. Just because that person is now experiencing pain similar to yours, it doesn't fix what was left over by their actions. So there you are. You have to come to terms with what's after revenge.
I'm so glad you bring that up, because that's something that's missing from most discussions about this realistic expectation of what can a revenge accomplish and what can it not.
Right.
Because you're right, it's not going to fix the emotional damage, especially if you've inflicted more on yourself throughout that process. You are still going to have to undergo a healing process. It's not going to take away the pain. It can only inflict pain. And sometimes that's proper. I mean, if someone, killed your loved one, or you were the victim of sexual assault or whatever else, absolutely there needs to be a proper legal remedy for that heinous crime, and they have to pay the penalty. But you are still going to have to mourn, whether it's the
Mhm.
mourning for the violation of your person or the mourning for the loss of your loved one. That process still takes place. And this is
And is
something that,
separate from
yeah, it
revenge.
absolutely, it is separate. And that's a,
Hmm.
a a conversation that I think could stand to be had amongst witches a little bit more often, because I've noticed a lot of people will want to use spells in order to avoid dealing with difficult emotions. And the most that spell could do, if it was successful, and that's a big if sometimes, is mask the symptoms. And then they
Yes.
figure out, then of course it resurfaces and they're mad. I guess magic doesn't work and nothing is real. No, you are using the wrong tool for the wrong job, sweetie. And the grown-up witches tried to tell you that at the time.
Yeah.
Let's see. What's
Yeah.
what's what's Mr. Raven saying? Because you guys been having whole conversations. Saying what's I
He's talking about a spin-off. Yeah.
what's ironic is Wesley proposes he becomes the next Dread Pirate Roberts, whose pirate ship is named the Revenge. Yeah, well, I mean, I guess that's do this until you find your new purpose kind of thing. Because even if once you accomplish your revenge, you're going to have to find a replacement purpose in addition to the healing process, which again is its own separate thing.
I used to watch, I think it was on ABC. The series is actually called Revenge, and it was about, Emily Thorne revenging her father's death. And she went through the whole, higher echelons of Martha's Vineyard to extract her revenge. And, throughout the entire series, it is interesting to watch the character become consumed with this action, or the revenge that she wants to extract, and then all the offshoots that happen because of it, all the
Mhm,
snafus that come into play. And then I'm not going to give away the series. There's a twist that the revenge becomes obsolete. And then
mhm,
at that point, you've done all of these things. you still have to live with that too. So
Oh yeah.
remember, whatever you do, not only do you have to live with the repercussions of the actions that were done against you, you have to live with repercussions of your own actions too.
That's true. And I think that absolutely gets completely glossed over for people. But
Hmm.
then again, we live in a society that it's weird. We have all this navel gazing, but we don't have very much genuine introspection.
Unless it's introspection upon somebody else, because they'll, you've got a lot of things that go out about everybody. I mean, I've seen no names come at like Tim Pool and like Steven
Mhm.
Crowder and like all these people, and I'm like, bruh, you have no idea what it's like or what they're going through or what type of actions that they've taken to this public reaction that you've seen. So, it's all very personal. And I'll tell you something, if I knew then what I know now, I wouldn't have had my little accident.
What is it they say about hindsight being 2020? Oh, that is a
Yes.
that is a rotten thing. Well,
Uh-huh.
I think we're kind of winding down with our thoughts here. I'm not sure how long we've been going on. It feels like about an hour, but we had that whole Rumble didn't work, and so we had to switch to YouTube on the fly. I tell you what, I am involuntarily learning some technical skills here. So
Yes, which is
yeah,
fine. I think we're
I'm
we're
not
all
sure
going through it.
I'm not sure it's making me a better person, but at least it's making me hopefully more effective at doing this kind of work. So I hope it's a net gain. But how do you want to sum this up? Where do you find yourself sitting with this concept of revenge after we've kind of talked some things through?
Uh, to everything its place.
Hmm.
And everything has a time. So, return what has been moved through time and space, to quote Charmed, seriously. If the instance calls for a reaction, don't go in with your mind ablaze. Don't go in blindsided. Take a full range of the incident into perspective. Get help people, get opinions on things,
Hmm.
but don't become complacent, because that's also the opposite end of the spectrum. And healthy balance is somewhere in between. That's what
Uh,
I got.
I think my thoughts are pretty close cousin to yours because I come back to this whole right tool for the right job. What are your motivations for seeking it? Even if you have just cause, are you going about it in a way that's actually going to achieve the result? And have you acknowledged within yourself there's going to be life after this that you're going to have to deal with? And you are still going to have to deal with the emotional repercussions of the original wrong. If you can get those things working in concert together, then I think I'm pretty comfortable with the idea of revenge. As in principle, the devil's always in the details, but in
Yes,
principle,
correct.
just to make that
We're not
clear.
condoning murder, is what we're
No,
saying.
we're not. YouTube, get off my back. But it's just it really is very situational, and I think there's a lot more nuance to the situation. And I'm really glad you were game to have this conversation because I feel that this is not something that people have looked into deeply. They took the slogans of what they were told and they just accepted it, and that's just as far as it went. And I think there's a lot more to really uncover with this. So I mean, maybe this will come up again in other future conversations. We'll have to see.
Yeah.
But um thank you to Mr. Raven Wolfgar for being with us. We appreciate you, sir, and it always makes it better when people are actually interacting with us. And I am hoping that you will eventually be a guest on with us at some point. Keep letting me know about scheduling. Georgia and I are housewives, so we're usually more flexible. So it's when are you free and what would you like to discuss, sir? And we can
That's right.
probably make that happen. Um,
Open invitation, on either channel. You can get a hold of Brigantia and say, hey, let's all get together. You can get a hold of me on my channel. It doesn't matter. So wherever you guys want to go, just get in contact.
Absolutely. And, as we have been expanding the circle at Blackbird's Brew and we're getting to know people that we're confident are acting in good faith, we do want to have more voices in these conversations because, again, George and I's perspective, I cannot believe I'm saying this, is not the end all be all. You have no idea how hard that is for a Leo to say. So I hope you guys appreciate it and mark the day down in your diaries. But I
That's
mean,
right.
but in a very real and in a more serious sense, we do need to have more pagan voices out there. We need to have a lot more variety of thought because we are presenting ourselves to the world, and I want to make sure that there's more people seen than just two housewives. So consider that in your calculations. And of course, if you've watched this and you're new to the channel, come join Blackbird's Brew Ungilded. Get to know us, build up that confidence, trust, and mutual respect, and become part of this more public conversation because we need you guys. We absolutely need it. But
And
apart from
I
that,
love it. I
Georgia,
love it.
tell them where else they can find you and anything you want to plug.
YouTube, Rumble, Truth Social, and Twitter. I've actually found myself on Twitter quite frequently lately, so I've been sharing everybody's links. I know that we've had the ticking scroll at the bottom here. I want to actually plug Gandalf's newsletter one last time. There is a link on my Twitter pinned to the top of the page for you to email and get into the email list. Now, what's so important about what Gandalf does is he collaborates everybody's collections and divvies them out to everybody on the email list. So if you don't have the time to sit down and take part of something like this, or if you need to collect that information together and it's really hard for you to do that, he already does it for you. So just go sign up for the email letter.
1000%. We love our Gandalf. And it seems that Raven Wolfgar has a final thought to share with the class. He said, "Let me tell you what the ultimate revenge is. String up your enemies by their toes using Christmas lights and have Ben Stein read War and Peace to them until they're literally bored to death." Well said, sir. Well said.
I can't
Oh,
top that. We got to
no,
sign off on that one.
neither can I. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching the replay. We will be back at you in the not too terribly distant future. And come see us on Gilded. Bye for now.
Bye.